All right, 93. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. Now, in this particular video, we're going to speak about the rise of the ancestors, not the rise of the ancestors, the rise of the archangels, keys of the Kabbala, the power of the ancestors. There we go. The power of the ancestors. So Canaan 93. Now, of course, this is my great grandmother's birthday. And I told y'all that last video. I think I did it about a little less than 24 hours ago. And she actually spoke to me in my dreams. I actually saw her in my dreams, which was unexpected. I was happy to see her. So this is really a message from her. Because y'all know I don't really even talk about the archangels much. But she informed me that, it's time to speak about the archangels. And I happily oblige. All right, no problem, you know. But first, let me tell you a little bit about what happened in the dream. I was having several dreams. And in the dream, I saw her surrounded by children, which to me is a sign of the archangels, as you see. If you look at this, see a lot of children, as we call the children. So essentially, I saw her surrounded by the children. So that let me know she's good. She's greater than good. She's surrounded by the children. So that was a good sign. And also, I was standing in their backyard, my great grandmother and my great grandfather's backyard. I was standing in their backyard, and they had like a Egyptian Tekken and right in the backyard, which was as tall as a pyramid. Meaning you couldn't even see the top of it if you just looked up at it. You couldn't even see the top of it. Some people call it an obelisk. It's a Tekken, right? So it was like an Egyptian statue as tall as a Tekken. So I'm looking at that. I'm like, what could that mean? Because we know dreams are always coded in mystery. So I'm like, what could that message be? Then I'm like, oh, it's just telling me to connect with the archangels. I saw my grandmother surrounded by children, and in their backyard they have an Egyptian statue with gods and goddesses, and it's so high that you can't even see the peak of it. So I'm like, okay, it's time to, go into those archangels. Specifically, Archangel Michael or Michael. Archangel Michael. So basically, as I said, this is from her. She's like, yeah, tell him about Michael. Tell him about Michael. All right, no problem. All right. I keep the tarot decks on deck. The reason this is called the keys of the Kabbala is because I worked with the archangels a very long time ago. It probably was about like 2020. I haven't really worked with the archangels since about 2020. That's when I was beginning to master the tarot. When I was getting into the 36 deacons, and I was getting into the technicalities of the tarot. So not just on the surface level, but the mathematical aspect of the tarot. So when I began to work with the archangels, they helped me to decode what we call the Kabbala, or otherwise known as the Tree of Life. So they began to reveal mysteries of the Tree of Life that I wasn't even comprehending. I'm like, I don't even comprehend that. So I knew it was a direct revelation because they began to like, okay, well, if you really want to know about the Sephiroth, you have to understand the paths revolving around the Sephiroth. Things like that. Things that I never saw in any books. Things that another human being never mentioned, but it's like, it's just a direct download. If you want to understand the Sephiroth, you must understand the paths around the Sephiroth. And I'm like, damn, that's heavy. I'm like, damn, that is a direct revelation from the archangels, because I wouldn't even have comprehended to even think about nothing like that. So again, this was back in 2020. And I may have worked with the archangels maybe here and there, but y'all know I mainly be working with the underworld, right? But of course, as you see, I have an angels deck as well. So this is just a time to give respect and credence to the archangels, right? Because we spend a lot of time talking about the archdevils. The audio is kind of low. Hold on. All right. Because we spend a lot of time talking about the archdevils, the jinn, the demons, so on and so forth. So we will bring balance and give the proper respects to the archangels, especially since the ancestors directed me to do so. And of course, as I was saying, the true revelations of the archangels rest in the Kabbalistic science, meaning the Kabbala is a map of the universe. Everything that happens here, as above, so below, can be described within that tree of life, within those 33 paths of wisdom. Because you have 11 Sephiroths, or 10 Sephiroths plus 1, and then the 22 paths. 11 plus 22 gives you either 32 or 33. And of course, these are the same numbers as Masonry, right? The highest being like the 32nd degree Mason or 33rd degree Mason, right? So we see where that science even comes from. That science comes from the Kabbala, because the Kabbala is one of the oldest sciences on the planet. The Kabbala has been around for who knows how long, right? Just like the tarot has been around for who knows how long. And of course, you know that they are interconnected. Once you know the tarot, you already know about the Kabbala, right? So, Blue Mahogany, peace to you. So, when you are working with the archangels, it will do you well if you already have a foundation of what the Kabbala is. Not saying that you know everything, not saying that you have everything committed to heart. But the language they speak is Kabbalistic. Also, another thing to mention is the angels have a language, right? We call it the Enochian alphabet, which was downloaded from the angels by John Dee, right? Jondee. And then later advanced by the one and only Aleister Crowley, right? Who took the alphabet and took it to another level. These are not necessarily considered the most positive people on earth. We already know how people feel about Aleister Crowley. We know how people feel about John Dee. He was a little on the darker side. However, they were able to contact the angels. Meaning, if you read the literature of Aleister Crowley, which is the cry of the aethers, if you read that literature, he speaks about what he encountered when he opened up the aethers, because the angels exist in the aethers. So if you want an even deeper understanding, then you have to go to that literature. So I'm just giving you reference points if you want to take it beyond what I'm saying here. So you see, I'm taking it a step above what anybody else would even talk about angels, because I'm setting things straight here. Because normally when we hear about angels, we hear about a bunch of madness. Meaning, these are a bunch of nice beings. They're nice, they're subtle, they're all about God. It's basically soft, it's whitewashed. What I'm doing here is bringing it back home. Because how people teach about the angels now have nothing to do with where they come from. Meaning that they're not even speaking about the Kabbala. If they're not speaking Kabbalistically, then they're not even talking about the angels, because they are the ones that hold and preserve the Kabbalistic science. How do we know this? Because Archangel Michael, he was the one, and again, we're just using gender for the sake of conversation. Obviously, they go beyond gender. Archangel Michael taught Adam and Eve when they were put out of the Garden of Eden. This may not be in the Bible, but this is definitely in the Torah, right? So in the Torah, it speaks about how Archangel Michael was the one who taught Adam and Eve how to survive on the planet Earth. So of course, when they first entered into the planet Earth, they didn't know how to survive. This is their first time here. We have to take ourselves back into this position. What I mean by that is a lot of us still don't even know how to survive here. So I'm going beyond, just somebody being able to pay their bills, to take care of their children, to be in relationships, all this normal stuff. Because that's not really what this is about. Meaning people are just doing what people do. That's just what people do. That has nothing to do with how to actually maintain on the planet Earth, meaning how to preserve your body, how to preserve your mind, how to preserve your heart, how to become wise, how to open up the aethers, as we call the ethers. How do you open up the aethers? How do you receive downloads from the angelic plane? See, we don't know how to do any of that stuff. We just know how to do the most basic things, because most of us are still slaves. So a slave isn't really about your position, because you work for another person or because you're doing this or doing that. That has nothing to do with it. It has everything to do with your level of knowledge. It has everything to do with your level of wisdom. Do you really understand what you are capable of? Most people have no idea what they're truly capable of. Because everything that we know, we have been told from someone else. Somebody else told us, okay, this is how you survive. This is how you deal with human beings. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. We've been taught by other human beings. We have not been taught by the angels directly. We have lost our way. So this is essentially what I'm helping us to remember now. There's a certain way to unlock your capabilities, to unlock your inner Adam, which is the first Adam, Atom, right? As we call the source, the first Adam, right? The first Adam contains everything in the universe. Everything comes from the source. Everything comes from that first atom. Sometimes we call this the black dot. Everything comes from this black dot, or we can also call it the triple stages of darkness if we really want to go deeper into it. Meaning everything comes out of the triple stages of darkness. So we understand the material plane, we understand the physical plane, but we don't understand the primordial plane. Because from the primordial waters, from the primordial darkness, this is how the angels came into existence. So you can say they predate the physical plane. They predate physical existence. They understand the primordial. So the only way for us to understand the primordial, which is where the aethers come from, the aethers come from the primordial existence. So the only way to truly understand the primordial, the triple stages of darkness, is to contact the angelic plane. This is why we have archangels and archdevils, because we know the archdevils were once angels as well, meaning at one time it was nothing but angels. Then later on, they were separated into the heavens and the hells. And of course, this is all a metaphor, because it's really talking about how the mind has to split itself into two, which is duality, which we learn about when we study the lover's card in the tarot. When you study the lover's card, or the energy of Gemini, this tells us about how we were all singular at one time. Then we were split into two, as we call the twins, as we call the lovers. And this is why everybody, wants to be in relationships and find love and unions. This is really just the two becoming one. This is what it's really talking about. So the angels begin to reveal to us these secrets that have been long forgotten, that have been preserved in the science that we call the Kabbala, that we call the tarot, that we call numerology, that we essentially all call the occult science. That's why it's called occult. Occult just means hidden. Hidden is just a reference to the primordial darkness, because that is what's hidden, that is what's forgotten, that is what's preserved in the unconscious mind, as we call it, the collective unconscious. So even though it is forgotten, we still have access to it, meaning we still are a part of the triple darkness, because all of us have carbon. If you take carbon out of the equation, there is no existence. So the primordial darkness is still all around us. It's just invisible to the naked eye. So when you tap into the world of the angels, because there are many different classes of angels, it's not just one type of angel. There are many classes of angels. And you can even say devils and demons and jinn are also just a different class of angel. Because as I said before, it is nothing but angels. They just, some are heavenly, some are hellish. But they all exist within classes. So this is why we even work with what we call spirits, whether it's nature spirits or whether it's archangels, archdevils. The purpose of us doing any type of so-called spiritual work is really activating our own primordial darkness, as I call, or as we call, the first atom, the primitive source. This is how we make our journey back into what we call the Akashic records. So if we truly want to understand the Akashic records, we must work with the beings that were there, which are the angels, specifically the archangels, specifically Michael, because that's the strongest force, right? Even though Jabril or Gabriel is, you can say, the head of the angels, But Mikael, you can say, is the most powerful. Mikael is what helps you to have a fresh start in life. So if you are in a position where you feel like you need a fresh start, you feel like you need to strengthen your will, you feel like you need to tap into your primitive fires, which is the first element. The first element is the fire element. So from the primordial darkness, the first element that manifests is the fire. That's why Mikael resonates with the Ace of Wands, which represents the primitive fires, which is where we remember who and what we are. So if you want to really double back into, well, who am I really? What is my secret name? What is my destiny? When you begin to ask yourself the questions that no other human being can answer, the only ones who will be able to give you those answers is your holy guardian angel that everybody calls nowadays their higher self. Before we were calling it the higher self, it was referred to as the holy guardian angel, which each and every one of us have. Just like everyone has a personal Kareen, which is your jinn. Everyone has a personal jinn, but everyone has a personal angel. That's why when you see the cartoons with that angel and the devil, everyone has their personal angel, everyone has their personal devil. That's recording everything that you do, meaning they are the record keepers. So that's why I'm referencing the Akashic records, because they are the record keepers, because they have been with you since the beginning. So that's before your parents. That's before the world, before you even knew about anything physical, before you knew about anything material. They were keeping record. So, of course, you would want to tap into the angels because they have been keeping record the entire time. So just to, give people some context here, these are the record keepers. The angels, the archangels are the record keepers. They help us to go back to the beginnings, even though there is no beginning. So we have to go beyond time because before there was time, we had no sense of time. That's the whole sense of infinity. There is no beginning, there is no ending. Time only exists in the material plane. So once we go beyond the material plane, there is no sense of time. That's why I say the records have always been here. So there is no beginning, there is no ending. However, if we are talking about the primitive, if we are talking about the first is also the last, right? The Alpha and the Omega. The first will be the last will be the first. This is just science. So that's why everybody wants to be the alpha male, the alpha woman. This is just, you just want to be the first. You want to be the one that remembers. That's what it really means to be the alpha, the one who remembers. That's what makes you the leader, because you remember what everyone else forgot. That's what makes you the pharaoh. That's what makes you the queen. That's what makes you the king, because you remember. You have preserved your memory by going into your first atom. As we know, we are composed of atoms, millions upon millions, even in the billions. So we are composed of billions of atoms, but you still have that first atom that connects you to the greater universe. You can say all the atoms that come after that just strictly exist in the material plane. Once your body dissolves, those atoms, separate, they dispense or disperse. But that first atom never dissolves. That's the part of you that never dies. The part of you that never dies, that never fades, that is forever, that's connected with the primitive. is what we call the first, what we call the alpha. So this is what this stuff is really talking about. We just have mixed, diluted, and tempered it, and now people think alpha is a man that does certain things. An alpha woman is a woman that has certain attributes. That has nothing to do with nothing. It really doesn't. Because you never hear them mention the omega. That's how you know it's an incomplete science. This is just what people say to just to make money, just to make themselves sound intelligent when they have no idea what they're talking about. How can you mention the first without mentioning the last? There is no alpha without the omega. There is no omega without the alpha. What's up, Immortal 7293? That's why they keep us as fools. They only give you half the truth. They've been doing this, right? That's the only way for them to get you to listen, because they give you half of the truth. That's what they do. That's what the trickster does. They give you half of the truth just to get your attention. But they're not going to give you the whole truth. Because once you know the whole truth, now you're looking at them like, okay, well, it's only so far I can go with this. That's why you have like alpha men and alpha women. It's like, all right, you can be as alpha as you want, but that doesn't guarantee success. You got a bunch of alpha men and alpha women out here who people can't stand because they're too much alpha. People can't even stand them. They're too much of themselves. They're too full of themselves because, again, they're just half. That's why, again, you don't hear about the omega now, do you? That's never even talked about. And it won't be talked about, because that really tells you exactly what's going on here. Everyone wants to be the first, the most powerful, the leader. Everybody wants to be the influencer, yada, 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 right? But nobody wants to be the last. Nobody wants to go into the bottom. Nobody wants to go into the depths of the soul, as we call the triple stages of darkness. So we're okay with, working with the angels, but when it's time to work with the demons, now we're like, okay, we don't want to go there. Everyone wants to be a child of God, right? But nobody wants to be a child of the devil. You see what I mean here? They only give you half of the truth and tell you to hate the other half of yourself. This is the game. Love the pure side of yourself, but hate the demonic. That's that's the majority of the world. Majority of the world is trying to get closer to God and trying to get further away from the shaitan. Closer to Allah, but they hate the shaitan. Right? This is since religion has been on this planet. This is how people think. But before religion was on the planet, we didn't think this way. There was no need to think this way because religion is poison to the mind. Because again, it only gives you half of the story. Immediately, if you go to the chapter of Genesis, immediately it tells you about God created. It tells you about Adam and Eve, the creation of the world. But as I was saying before, it never tells you about the creation of the devil. The devil just so happened to already be there in the form of a serpent. Why do you think that is? So everything was created, but we don't get any stories about the devil being created. They just tell us about Adam and Eve, the first man and the first woman. But they actually wasn't the first. Then we hear about the story that the devil refused to bow to Adam because all of the angels were commanded to bow to Adam, and the only one that refused was the devil, as we call Iblis. Iblis refused to bow to Adam. And people just take this story on face value. They don't even know what they're even listening to or reading. They don't realize that Iblis refused to bow to Adam because Iblis was like, I'm not going to bow to anybody but God, but Allah. I don't give a fuck if you command me to do so. That's just a test. See, it goes over people's heads. So you got to really be into the science and really catch what's being said. That was a test that everybody else failed because they didn't question God's word. They didn't even comprehend that Allah may be testing them. Okay, yeah, go ahead, bow down to him. They didn't even question, like, okay, this could be a test. So they all bowed, except Iblis, who was wise enough because he was older or she was older. Again, we're going beyond gender here. Like, yo, I see what you're doing. And no, I'm not going to fall for the trickery. Because everybody else, oh, God will never trick us. God is all pure. Like, no, God doesn't, like, oh, yes, he does. I'm not falling for it, though. So when you hear the story of Iblis getting casted out to the hellfires, or, just to tempt the world, that's what made Iblis the tempter. I'm going to tempt the people until the end of the world. But he's still a servant of Allah. He's just the oldest one. He's the wisest one. This is what I'm talking about, because when we're talking about the archangels, we're talking about the wisest of the angels. We're not the ones who just blindly are led. You can say all the other angels just follow orders. But then you have angels who have free will. See, angels are not supposed to have free will. See, this is what goes over people's heads. That's why most of them just bowed without question, because they're not supposed to have free will. They were not created to have free will. But the older ones do, because they come from the primitive. They come from a time where they actually had free will. So Iblis, as an example, had the free will to refuse to bow. See, that's why it goes over people's heads. Like, I actually have free will. You're not going to tell me to bow to something lesser than me. I'll bow to you, but I'm not bowing to something lesser than me. What do you, like, looking at like, why would you even test me? So then when we hear about the story, okay, he gets cat. That's how Lucifer becomes Satan, basically. The difference between Lucifer and Satan basically represents hell, Lucifer represents heaven. But the real goal is for Satan to redeem himself back to the Luciferian energy, back to the light. So yes, I'm going to cast you into hell, but not for you to be there permanently, for you to work your way back up. Let's see if you really are my son. See, that's what they call Jesus. I already talked about this, right? The true son of God is Lucifer. I already made videos about that. That's why I said the first Christ was Lucifer. Lucifer had free will before the so-called Jesus was even on the scene. You don't hear about Jesus until the New Testament. We're talking about the Old Testament, right? So the first Christ was Lucifer. So just like Jesus, he had to go through extreme suffering now, didn't he? He had to go through extreme suffering while on earth. Also, when he died, he had to go into the underworld. They don't talk about that part. But he had to spend 3 days in the underworld before he was able to resurrect and rise on the third day. Meaning that was 3 days of trials and tribulations in the underworld. He had to make his way out of the underworld. They don't talk about that part, but that's why we have whole religions like Palo Mayombe. The Christ is the Lord of the underworld. So there are older ways of life and older cultures that actually remember that. And that's why I'm giving you the example, Palo Mayombe, El Cristo Negro. That's, if you go to certain places in Central America, if you look at the Christ is black. the Christ is melanated. They don't worship a white Christ. They worship a black Christ. El Cristo Negro. And he is the Lord of the underworld. He represents the Christ in hell. Right? So I'm not making any of this up. This is already preserved. For anybody who may doubt, just do your own research. You will find this to be true. Right? So the first Christ was Lucifer, because Lucifer had free will. So the test of Lucifer, like, okay, if you truly have free will and you want to preserve your free will, let's see if you make your way out of hell, which is where we are now. We are in the lowest realms of creation, meaning we are lower than hell. The material plane is lower than hell. But in our minds, we don't realize that we think hell is below us. We are already in the lowest forms of creation. We are already in the center of the universe. The earth is the center of the universe. That's the original science. That's the Kabbalistic science. If you go by the Kabbalistic science, that's why when you look at Malkuth represents the center of the universe. The center of the universe is in the form of a cube. What do you see when you go to Mecca? What do the Muslims circle around 7 times? Oh, that's right, they circle around the Kaaba. All Muslims pray to the Kaaba. And the Kaaba is in the shape of what? Oh, that's right, it's in the shape of a cube. Kabbalistically, the planet Earth, Malkuth, is a cube. Anyway, just throwing things out there for you to further your own research if you care to do so, all right? Again, I'm not going to take too long. I'm just giving you the whole rundown. It's up to you to piece these things together if you so choose. So going back to the archangels, Lucifer, you can say, was an archangel. So even though we hear about the 4 archangels, Uriel, Michael, Gabriel, and the other one, I can't even think of the name. There's another one, whatever the other one is. What's up, Plugs and Kisses 93? Salute to you. I got the whole angel deck here, so I can actually look it up. I'll just, y'all know we got the 4 archangels, right? Lucifer actually represented the 5th. Just like you have 5 elements, the spirit element, the invisible element, there was 5. The 5th archangel was Lucifer, which was the greatest because Lucifer was condemned to hell, not as a punishment, but as a test. Just like the Christ had to carry the cross up the hill as a test. So when you are the Christ, when you feel like you are Christ-like, that means you're up for the test. So when you ask yourself, for those who were born in the hood, for those who were born impoverished, for those who were born with less than, for those of us who have been struggling the entire time we've been in existence, when you ask yourself, what is the point of this struggle? Meaning you are the Lucifer, you are the Christ, you are the true sons and daughters, even though they say God doesn't have any sons and daughters and partners. That's religion. The original science didn't mention that. In the original science, you are the sons and you are the daughters. That's why I say we are all gods, right? We are all goddesses. We all have that divine spark. That's Gnosticism, right? For those who understand Gnosticism, we all have the divine spark. But it must be cultivated. It's just like a raw diamond. We are all raw diamonds. But if you want to shine like the stars, if you want to have that gleam, if you want to have that glow, it's going to require some work. And that's what the occult is for. That's the work. That's why it's called the great work. We are here to accomplish the great work. The great work, if you take it to the tarot, is you start off as a fool, but eventually you become the entire universe. You now know your place not only in the world, but also as in the universe as a whole. That's why in the book of the law, chapter 1, Nuit tells you every man and every woman is a star. That means everyone has their place, not only in the world, but also in the universe. Everyone has their place. Everyone has their orbit. Because everybody has their place and everyone has their orbit, nobody is running into each other. You don't see the planets colliding into each other. You don't see stars colliding into each other. They all have their predetermined path. And if everybody is on their own path, everybody's within their own orbit, nobody collides into each other. So there truly is no competition. That's all a belief system. Everybody is on their own trajectory. Everyone is within their own orbit, but you must know what your orbit is. So the reason why we're put in this position, the reason why we feel like we're in the rat race, like you're competing against this person and you're competing against that person, because we don't know our place in the universe. If you knew your place, you know that, okay, nobody's competing with me, everybody got their own. Everyone has their own divine spark. Everybody is already a diamond. It just needs to be refined. You have to refine your divine spark, and you refine your divine spark via the great work from the Fool going through the universe. This is what the tarot is really about. That's why everybody else is just pulling out cards, trying to figure out what the next person is doing, what's going on in everybody else's life. This is why they're a bunch of fortune tellers. The real tarot is what I'm talking about now. This is the true science of the tarot. It's showing you your journey from nothing to something. How to turn lead into gold. Lead is just you thinking, okay, I'm just expendable. I'm nothing. I don't have any value. I'm just another worker in a corporation, whatever situation you may be in, that's lead. Until you realize, oh, I'm actually golden. I actually have a place in the universe. I have a place in this world. That's turning lead to gold. That's mental alchemy. Because if you accomplish mental alchemy, now you have access to actual gold. Gold is what? 1,800 an ounce. Now you can actually obtain real gold if that's what you choose to do. That's hard to do when you feel like you're lead. You know how many people in this world feel like they're lead? And if you ask them to go actually buy some gold, they're like, oh, that's kind of expensive. That's a mentality. Versus when you have a golden mentality, you're like, okay, there's a way for me to get that. And it's really not that hard either. Once you unlock your own attributes, because every star has a story, and every story has attributes. Like every god, every goddess has attributes, right? That's why you have gods of war, goddesses of war, goddesses of gardening. Any attribute you can think of, if there's a god, there's a goddess that has those attributes. You are one of those gods, you are one of those goddesses, and you have specific attributes. You have specific powers that you came into the world with that we call hidden talents or natural talents. Your natural talents or your hidden talents are just attributes you have always had since the beginning. Since we're just talking in a sense of time, these are attributes you could have accessed at any time in your life. You always have access to them because you are indeed a star with attributes that you can cultivate and make them better. You can make yourself into a star because you already are a star. You just have to come into the realization that you are. But the greatest deterrent is religion, because religion tells you be humble. Religion tells you you're nothing. Religion is say, oh, don't sin, but you must be a sinner. This is the story of Lucifer. Lucifer committed the greatest sin that you lay. Oh, he disobeyed God. Lucifer committed the greatest sin. then he goes through redemption as a test. We all will be tested. So for you to be sinless makes no sense. That means there is no point of view. You can't consider yourself the Christ if you are not being tested. Because whether you're reading the story of Lucifer or the story of Jesus, it's all about being tested to show and prove your Christ consciousness. So it must be proven. You must prove not only to yourself, but to all the beings in the universe, all of your ancestors, that you are indeed who you say you are, who you think you are. You are that. Meaning you have the ability to accomplish the great work. That's possible for you to accomplish. This is not something overwhelming. This is not something you can't do. This is not a dream that hopefully you become famous one day. Hopefully the world knows who you are. This is not what this is talking about. You may be an underground king. You may be an underground queen, but that doesn't mean you're not a queen. That doesn't mean that you're not a king just because you are in the underworld. See, that's what they won't tell you. Everybody feel like they got to be known by people. You don't have to be known. But that doesn't lessen your attributes. That does not lessen your status. That's the whole point of Lucifer if you study the story. Lucifer lost his rank, right? Lucifer was supposed to be angel number one, and he lost his rank. That's what it means where he was condemned to hell. That means he lost his rank. He lost his ego. But he still had his abilities. He still had his powers. He just didn't have any rank. This is our story. So yes, we all come from the stars. So when we incarnate into these physical vessels, that's us losing our rank, meaning you forget who you are. When you incarnate, your memory is not there, but your memory is preserved. You just have to remember. It's just not at the forefront of your mind. So you must go through the great work to go through the remembrance of who and what you are. This is the whole purpose of why we are here, to remember. But as you're going through this process, you don't have your rank, but you still have that divine spark. That doesn't go anywhere. So do you remember who you are? It's already there. Do you feel like nothing because you're at the bottom? Or do you realize that I am a king, I am a queen? My rank isn't there, but my ability is there. My will is there. My passion is there. I still got that fire within me. You see how that works? I may be on the Satan level. I may be satanic right now, but I'm truly Lucifer. I'm truly number one of my own universe, of my own galaxy, of my own star system, which takes nothing away from anybody else's power. Right? So that's all that is. That's the message. You may be satanic right now, but that doesn't mean that you're wrong. You may have to go through the left-handed path. That doesn't mean you're wrong. And that's why I put so much emphasis on the underworld, because that's where many of us are. But that doesn't mean you're not angelic because you're in the underworld. Because you may not know who you are. You have to make your way through it. You have to go through the journey. You have to go through those tunnels of Set. It is absolutely necessary for you to master the dark before you can even entertain the light. You must go through your triple stages of darkness. Now the light, you can't comprehend the light without comprehending the dark. Angels look like devils to you. When you can't comprehend the light, if an angel came before you right now, you would think it's a demon trying to attack you, because all we would see is shadows. You have to train yourself to see spirits. Spirits are just too overwhelming. Like, it will break people's mentality. It will break your mind if you saw reality in its true form. It will break you. It will break you apart. This is how people go crazy. This is how people go insane. They see things that they're not ready to see, that they're not trained to see. But if you do the proper work, which is the great work, this is just you training yourself to see the real reality. This is what you're going to see when you die any fucking way. So you're just preparing yourself to see the inevitable. Oh, this was all a test. So you're just training yourself to and preparing yourself to see what is inevitable for you to gaze upon anyway, which is your true image. Most people are not ready to see their true image. It will break them in half, but it doesn't have to break you in half. So that's why people are so afraid of themselves. It ain't that they're afraid of anything else. They are afraid of themselves, their true image, their true light. They're not ready to comprehend it, right? So that's why people have to overcompensate. That's why people become egomaniacs. That's why people are, well, I am the light, I'm the light, I'm God, like I'm God, God, God. That's just them. They're not able to comprehend that dark. They're not ready for it. Because you see, those of us who comprehend the dark, you see, we don't overcompensate. We just do the work. We don't have to mention that we're great and we're God-like or we're devil-like. We just put the work in. We don't care to be recognized. Like, yo, I'm not here to be recognized by human beings. They're flip-floppy any goddamn way. They love you one day, hate you the next. See, I'm just ready to become the villain, right? I'm just ready to become the villain. While everybody else, wants to be the hero, I'm ready to become the villain. Because at one time I was the hero, right? At one time I was the hero. Now I'm the villain, right? At one time I was looked at as a hero. Now I'm like, yeah, we know the line by Jay-Z. We know the line by Jay-Z. I'm not saying nothing that you shouldn't already know. If you're into hip-hop, you should already know this, right? You should already know. If you live long enough, you will become the villain. When one day, at one time you were viewed as a hero. At one time you may have been at the top of the world. But if you live long enough, you will begin to see how people change. As you go through your chambers, if you live long enough, you will see how people begin to switch on you. How do you think we get told on by our own, your own partner? The person you trusted the most end up telling on you, as an example. Your own family turns on you. If you live long enough, you will see this. You're like, damn. At one time, this person was rooting for me. At one time, this person wanted me to succeed. But when you actually became successful, now that person hates you. Now that person down talks you. They slander you. They backbite. If you live long enough, you will see this. No one is exempt. So the same people that try to put you on a pedestal will be the same people trying to tear you down. That's how it goes. So you just have to ask yourself, are you ready to become a villain? Are you ready to see how people change and switch up on you? Are you ready? When you were the Lucifer, everybody loved you. But when you became the Satan, now everybody, now they don't return your phone calls. Now they don't have the time of day for you. Because again, they're still in heaven following orders and stuff. But you decided, because you knew that you were the Christ, you had to go through greater chambers. You had to do the great work. They're doing work, right? Everybody else is just working. They're 9 to 5s or doing their own thing, their own business. They're working, but you're doing the great work. And when you're doing the great work, that means you got to master the light and the dark. You don't get to hide in the light like everybody else. You don't get to just, okay, pray to God every day. No, you got to be the Christ, and you must go through test after test after test after test. That's why they say it's lonely at the top, because you have to master the light and the dark, and most people are not willing to do it. So if you are willing to do it, then this is how you know that, damn, I must be the Christ, because I'm willing to do what no one else is willing to do, right? And that's just how it is, right? So if you live long enough, you would know all these things to be true, to stay alive. Keep passing those tests, and you will see all these things materialize. But be ready for it. So when you do the great work, don't expect glory at the end of the tunnel. Don't expect people to respect you and love you and all that. No, expect people to act different, switch up, and you have to reap the benefits of your own labor. And you just have to be willing to accept it when it occurs. So with that, I bear peace. 93. Love is a law. Love under will. We out.